there, traders. What's going on? Welcome back. It is Friday, and today we're going to talk about not just my supervillain name, but a technical indicator on Bitcoin called the Death Cross, everyone's favorite signal. There's some negative connotations to death crosses. We're going to look at the history. We're going to see if there really is, or if there really should be, a negative connotation. We're going to look at Bitcoin's history. We're going to project out about when we can expect this because it has not happened yet. We're going to talk about what we might expect to happen price-wise, how we might prepare, and look for similarities and differences to the previous death crosses we've seen. So I appreciate you joining me on a Friday. Happy Friday, by the way, everybody. Really quick, smash that like button. Share out the stream, subscribe, join our fam. We're live here all the time on YouTube. We've been going strong for 6.5 years, and we do it for the love of the game. Only 80 nerds here, Tonsi. There'll be more. Don't worry. We're just warming up, bud. We're just warming up. So death crosses. In front of us is the last few years of Bitcoin's price action. In green, we have the 200 daily moving average, and in yellow, we have the 50 daily moving average. Simple moving average is not exponential. When these cross, we look for either a death cross, which is what is brewing right now above us, the 50 daily above the 200, and looking to intersect. We've seen this happen multiple times in Bitcoin's history, and we've actually seen this becoming more frequent in this bull run. It's an interesting thing that we'll talk about in a little bit. The bullish or golden cross is the opposite when the 50 crosses above the 200. Like, this is the best example back here in October of last year. Unfortunately, we're not looking at the golden cross right now. We're looking at the death cross. As we can see, the 50 has begun to level out. It's begun to retract or pull back down, meaning the average price over the last 50 days has been declining compared to August 28th. The 50 previous days to August 28th. The 200 day is still rocketing up, and with the 50 moving sideways, we can expect these to cross under a few conditions. Because this is still far away, it's not tomorrow, almost no matter what, this can't happen in the next few days. Almost no matter what, just based on averages. But as this is curling down and the 200 is moving up, we can pretty much expect this to happen as long as I was saying, these conditions are met. If price ranges in between 114 and 108, we will watch these get closer and closer and closer and closer. They probably will cross in that scenario, but they'll just get closer and closer, and they'll drag it out longer and longer. If Bitcoin trades above 114, and we've talked about the bullish potential here, if price can recapture the 115 area, things start looking really good. If it can retake 114, 115 and hold there, this cross actually doesn't have to happen. If price can resume above the 50 daily moving average, that will slowly but surely pull this 50 moving average up, and as the 200 continues, we will not see them cross here. That would be awesome. On the other hand, if price breaks down like some people are looking for over the last, well, all of October. October only existed if you inverted the chart, apparently. A lot of people looking for further downside, trading below the 200 or below 108.4. The longer or more candles close there, the faster this cross is likely going to happen. That's the reality of it. So first, let's do this first. Let's ballpark. We've done this for every golden cross and every death cross over the last few years. Let's ballpark when this is going to happen. Now, this is kind of a technical analysis tool or concept that I've made up over the years, but I don't really know a better way to do it, and I think that this is logical. So what we're going to try to do is basically fit a trend line on the 50-day. I think this is a reasonable way to fit it. You could argue maybe it's a little bit more flat. Maybe we want to have something like this. Doesn't really matter. We're just looking for a rough estimate. Now the 200 is much easier here as this incline is very smooth, very general, and we're gonna do the same thing. on 1 sec. Everything smooth on the stream? Smooth like butter. There we go. Butter. Okay. We're going to do the same thing down here with the 200. We're going to turn this green for the sake of simplicity. And we're going to look for where they cross. This is almost never perfect, but very commonly gives us a good idea of when to expect this. So at the current placement, we'd be looking actually towards the end of November, which would be interesting. That is in the scenario that nothing crazy really happens price action wise between then and now, and price just trades sideways. That's probably where we would be looking. It doesn't fit great with a kind of the cycle wrapping up into the end of this year, the 4-year cycle concept. But like we said, this can accelerate or it can decelerate. And we're going to look at what in the past price action wise we've seen and how that might fit into it in just a little bit. Let's also make a shorter term prediction. Let's use that more steep angle. And let's do the same thing. And that gives us a little bit closer. Yeah, 19th to 24th. That's like a week period. Not a bad estimate. Not a bad time to look for it. Again, price goes up above 115. All of a sudden, this can start moving up. 200 can start moving up, and this can drastically change. But for now, I like these. We're going to keep these here. So as time progresses and this matures, we'll call it, we're going to get closer and closer. So let's be prepared. Let's go look back at the seemingly frequent death crosses that we've seen in this bull run, right? So let's zoom out, and to get a picture of this, and it's kind of just interesting. If you look back at previous bull runs, so 2015 to 17, you'll find that this didn't actually it didn't happen. There was one time, October of, it's weird, it's in October again. Remember that. October 2015, we got a golden cross after a death cross. And they just really were afraid of each other, like oil and water. Magnets of the same direction. They stayed away from each other. We saw tests of the 200 as price pushed up. And we didn't get a death cross until March. Until the top had already been in. Until price had already traded 54% down. It's interesting. This doesn't fit the picture we see today. As time went on, we saw these crosses happen more frequently. In 2019 into 2020, we saw golden cross, death cross, golden cross, death cross, golden cross, and then kind of the same concept. These two moving averages stayed away from each other. This is maybe a lens to view the difference in price action that we've seen in this bull cycle versus the previous. Price basically stayed above the 50 the entire time. It tapped it as support. And once we saw a death cross, largely the run was over. We had one more peak in November. It didn't really bring us anywhere. But this is a different vibe. It's even different from the scenario right before it, right? We had the all-time high. The high was long gone. Death cross came, went into bear market. Here, the highs were pretty much over, but there was still one more all-time high in play before the death cross in January of 22 that brought us into the bear market. And what's interesting also is this death cross remained in this situation, meaning the 50 under the 200, in a downtrend until the beginning of the bull market. So they're less frequent in the past, but they seem to, I'll say, maybe be more related to price action, more consistent, more what you would expect, right? A death cross is scary and bearish. It is a bearish signal, it's supposed to be. And in the past, we've seen these things operate largely like that. You know, we see golden crosses leading to big expansive rallies, like in April of 29, in May of 2020, an all-time high after September. And even into the start of this run, golden cross kicking off the bear market bottom. But what we see into this cycle, and I was saying this is a lens to view why this has felt different. You can visually see it's different here. In this run, or at least since 2023 started, we've seen multiple crosses, both gold and death, both bullish and bearish. But interestingly, they haven't really played out the way that we've seen them in the past. Since 2023, pretty much every single cross that we have had of the 50 and the 200 has been bullish. We're going to take a look at this exactly. I'm going to explain what I mean. But for a great starter to kick off right here, February of 23, Golden Cross. Yeah, we came back down, but really price just moved up into the right after that. We had what? Cross again in October. It's interesting, the correlation with October and these crosses. We'll get to that later. Ran us to new all-time highs. Again, in May of this year, we ran to new all-time highs. We've had an interesting but like conflicted history with these crosses. And this cycle has really just defined it by, it redefined it. It changed the way that at least I use these in analysis, and I don't know, the way we should view them potentially for future cycles. So we have the death cross coming up, and we've decided it's likely going to be sometime in November, plus or minus, I don't know, a little bit of time in November. So what should we expect? Let's look back at what happened the last few times. So at the start of the run, right here, September of 2023, we see that the death cross confirmed. It confirmed. It officially crossed and closed. I would say September 10th. Around then, price hit its exact low within a day or two. In September 11th, this might have been 48 hours, might have been 72 hours, but basically in the same week, within, close enough to touch, we saw the range low put in, and it was respected after that. We saw price climb and move towards all-time highs. Another interesting thing is, into this death cross, we had extremely bearish sentiment. This was back when the bull run was largely not believed by most people. People were still expecting large sell-offs, maybe even continuation of the bear market. Sentiment was in the crapper. The death cross came and it confirmed these negative thoughts. It confirmed the negative sentiment. People sold their Bitcoin. They said, I'm going to rebuy lower. I'm going to play this game. I think we go down to 10K still. It obviously didn't come, but that death cross in 23, I'll say within a 48-hour period, mark the bottom. Golden cross came, we were moving, right? So it's interesting that the first example we have wasn't really bearish. It did trade lower into and on the day and maybe a day after the cross happened, but it wasn't really bearish. It was only bearish in sentiment. It was only bearish in conception. People were afraid of it. They were already afraid. And this looming signal that was coming, because look at how concrete this was back then, right? The 50 was rocketing down. Price had sold underneath the 200-day. It had rejected and traded sideways, and things looked awful. The death cross largely served as confirmation for the bearish position. It was obviously the wrong decision in hindsight, but it was largely a sentiment or psychological thing. So let's move on to the next one. What you'll notice, though, is that this happened one time in 2023. Keep that in your mind. We have to go all the way to 2024 now to get an example of a golden or death cross again. The next one is officially, confirmed officially. Let's say about August 9th or August 10th. It's weird. Last one was September 10th. This one's August 10th. Coincidence, probably. Confirmed right about here. Similar price action, similar sentiment. We had hit all-time highs pre-halving. People were about as euphoric as they could have been through this cycle. I don't know, there really hasn't been another time where it seems more exciting. But let's see, March passed, April passed, May passed, June passed, July passed, and we were into August. It had been 150 days since an all-time high. And ever since that all-time high, all we saw was lower highs and lower lows. The market looked very bearish again. Sentiment coming into August and off of July's rejection was, I'm not going to necessarily say the exact same as September of the year before, but very similar in the sense of people were very bearish. They were convinced that this was the rollover. This was it. It was done. Price traded down under 50K. Which the new investors, I would say, that started here if they started in Bitcoin, probably never thought it would trade under 50,000. And they bought and they watched it grind down and they saw it hit 50. And I think largely they exited the market. Sentiment was very, very low. Again, we saw this death cross looming. Price action, I think, was even more suggestive than the cross itself of further downside. And again, within how many days? Within 4 days, again, like within the same week period, the bottom had been marked. The death cross was done, and we never traded lower. In this example, the low was in before the cross, and the one before the low was like within a day or two. And we never invalidated that. We never went back. This was again confirmation for the bears that they were correct. Golden Cross came in October and price rocketed to new all-time highs. Now, it's almost like the exact same scenario again. We go into 2025. So remember, there's one in 23, there's one in 24. Here we are in 25. This seems like 2 years ago to me. Anybody else? Like, I know that this was just April of this year and it's October, but this feels to me like a year or 2 years ago at this point. This has been the longest year of my life. We have a similar scenario heading into 25. We hit all-time highs. I don't know if there was really euphoria. There was definitely. I'd say this was debatably the other euphoric time in this run was actually at the end of 24 and heading into 25. This is when coins were moving. XRP broke all-time high. Probably new retail entered here and back in March of the year before. We saw the exact same thing. This time it didn't take quite as long. 109 days versus 150, but we saw price hit all-time highs and just grind down. It broke 100K, but rejected really moving any higher. And I think sentiment again, as price sold off, bottomed. Lower high after lower low over and over and over again into April. And what did we see? We saw the looming death cross above us as the chart looked absolutely terrible. And yet again, the death cross served to confirm that bearish sentiment, to be the validation that people looking lower were looking for. And they said, look, it's the death cross. It has a scary name. It's death. That means bad, right? And one more time, where was the low? This time the low came, it came what? Within 24 hours. Okay. Within 24 hours of the death cross, we saw the low in. That low never tested again. Price moved on, recovered, and went to all-time high. This is the third time in a row that happened. And it's the third time in a row that sentiment was in the gutter and that people thought the run was over. And this was the reason they were getting out. I'm going to buy back lower. There's the third time in a row that sentiment or that mindset got left in the dust. What's interesting when you look at this in the bigger picture is that we saw exactly one example of this each year. It was almost exactly the same too. You can see these periods in between the death cross and then the golden cross were pretty quick. Each golden cross led to a rally. Each death cross marked basically a bottom within a few day period. And so what's interesting is both the death cross and the golden cross were both arguably bullish, at least in my opinion. We were bullish through these, but in my opinion, they were arguably bullish. Sentiment and the runaway fear is what made them bearish in real time. It's what got people caught. What's interesting is now we have the same scenario. It doesn't have to play out. And I might even make the argument here that I don't think it will. Maybe that's too much opium. We have the same setup here, but we're in 2025 still. We haven't seen two crosses in the same year during this cycle. So that does diverge from the pattern we've seen. Makes me a little less comfortable. But there's a scenario where this maybe makes me more comfortable, right? So an argument we've made is that in a bull run, and we only have one example of this run, but in a bull run, these crosses are bullish regardless because the trend is bullish and they react bullishly to the trend. Like they follow the trend, and that at some point when we entered a bear market, these crosses would change, and maybe we would see golden crosses on the day that just get sold into and lead to lower lows, and bear crosses on the day that plummet price lower. The argument that it might just be following the trend, and so we reasonably expect a bear trend to begin at some point with Bitcoin. We've had 3 years, almost 4 years now of up. Next year follows the pattern really closely of Bitcoin putting in 3 green candles on the year and then 1 red and right back to 3 green. And so we have this cross coming up towards the end of the year. It doesn't really fit the pattern, right? It seems a little odd that we would see this kind of ebb and flow of energy change. Maybe it does have to do with the cycle ending, or maybe it is just going to play out the way that we've seen every single year, this year included, where price dicks around, people are bearish, we see a low in, we see the death cross, and we see new all-time highs, we see rallies. I honestly, I think that that's the second most likely scenario. I'm always bullish, baby. Second most likely scenario. My most likely scenario, though, is I think that we do, even if we see brief trading lower, I think that we actually retake this 114, 115 level, trade up here, and I think we avoid this cross for now. You can never avoid them forever. Price is always chasing moving averages, and moving averages are always chasing price. So the best we can do is kick that can down the road. A reason I think that's the most likely scenario is, in that case, we might see something like we've seen every cycle. An end of a blow off top, a big expansive move to the upside, this cross is avoided, and then what happens is into next year, as the top is in, price cools off, hopefully we get some kind of euphoria, right? Comes back down to reality, then we see this cross happen later in 2016. We see the death cross complete, keeping a neat and tidy pattern of just one of these events each year, fitting the 4-year cycle where we see a blow off top finale in Q4. This is what I believe will happen. This is what I think will happen. It fits the narrative and the design that I've been talking about pretty much all year, but take it with a grain of salt, right? Nobody knows what's going to happen. Lots of people believe that this cycle is different, that Bitcoin is not going to experience the same rhythmic 4-year pattern that we've seen it do over the last, I'd say, 10 years, 12 years. There is always reason or hope for that, and I would love and welcome that scenario. I think in that scenario, though, if that's the case, maybe the typical death cross into the low is what happens. Maybe that would be more in that line, right? Then we see a rally afterwards into Q1 that sells off and just does the same thing, rinse, repeat. But I was saying, yeah, nobody knows the future. People are hoping for something different. I welcome the idea. I'm just gonna have to have the chart show me. I've been bit in the ass too many times thinking this time's different. Hopefully that means this time it is, but I don't know. Nobody knows. These are my thoughts. This is the way I think it's going to happen. These are the I don't know, the way these factor into my brain and my trading calculation. Oh, I think Professor Bean's trying to get in. I guess the summary of it is that the death cross largely has not lived up to its name this cycle. This cycle, the death cross has honestly been, no, not even honestly been, it has been the best buying opportunity every year for the last 3 years. We have one approaching. Depending on what price action happens between now and then, it can happen this year or it can happen into next year. And it may serve again to be the best buying opportunity. Each low is marked by one of these death crosses, and price did not return to those prices. The market didn't return to those prices. At some point, I expect that to fail. And this, nothing can ever be that easy. But once we do see this fail, this is the final kind of alpha thought here. Once we do see this fail, once death crosses don't mark bottoms, and once golden crosses are no longer leading to expansive upside moves, that's likely, or I'd say even very likely, a signal that the bear market is here, that the bullish trend is over. I've never heard anyone really talk about that concept except us, but once we see them fail to perform the same way they performed the entire cycle, I think that's going to be a pretty clear-cut sign. Taking this with a grain of salt one more time, this is the first time we've seen Bitcoin react this way to this specific trading environment, signal, whatever you want to call it. In the past, it has not operated this way, as these have been really rare, happening only basically at the bottom and tops of markets. We've seen an unwinding of that volatility, closer price action, and a little bit more chaos when it comes to this. So don't fear. Don't be afraid. Be healthily skeptical at all times. Make a plan. Make a plan for whatever scenario, right? Only up doesn't go on forever. You got to have some kind of plan. I would not personally be looking to, say, sell or even short into, like, expecting a lower low on the cross. That isn't my style of trading. I think that risk is a little janky for where we are. And looking back, we really didn't see price trade much lower than it had on these. So for me, I'm just chilling. Maybe if the death cross is right here above us and we see a low being put in, like a energetic sell-off that gets bought up, maybe I'll look to take a long position to scalp back up to maybe the all-time high, something like that. I won't be looking for the short setup, I would say, until maybe that fails. Maybe until we see a recovery from a death cross that doesn't lead to higher highs. Maybe then I'll start spotting for them.